carry that on, they will lose control of it. For the Lord will use what is in their hand, what they have done, in order to remind them that He is still God and He is alive and not dead as they all presumed that He was dead. When God Himself was being merciful and kind, when He was being patient and then praying and hoping and waiting for His children to return to Him, and they said that He had died, and some say that He did not exist. And today, now, they know He is alive and He does exist, and the things that He's doing, just as the Lord has shown in then in the land of Egypt, with Joseph sitting down there. But you see the actions of wisdom and wise men in leadership. He decided to buy up food and store up food long enough to last throughout the famine. And when he finished, he continued to expand the house of the nation, the storehouse of the nation, the house of Pharaoh and the land of Egypt. In the purchases that he made of all that they have, they were doing trade by barter. They come, they bring their livestock, and they get food in order to sustain themselves until they now sold them own self. They served themselves and sold their land to Pharaoh. And look at how much money that what Joseph has made for Pharaoh and Egypt. Everything ended up becoming for Pharaoh. But I want you to take an action from there as the key message from this particular passage. The key message there is that you saw the slavery, the bond servant of one surrendering themselves and selling themselves to a king, which I mentioned in the previous series, talking about the misunderstanding about what slavery in the Bible and Bible supporting slavery, people who give up themselves so that they will live in such a crisis situations. The survival of the fittest, or rather, when it becomes that self-preservation is a natural right. So when people take certain action in order to preserve their life and preserve themselves, and people to get offended with that, like all the indigenous people around the world fighting for their self-preservation, because they are being targeted and planning to become extinct because of the oppressive hands of the wicked and evil. People, for example, in Nigeria, where those who were foreigners have found themselves in a positions of power because they served in the military. Just like here in America, you can become a citizen by serving the United States government in the military. A lot of people are brought into this country for the same reason, so that they can enlist and join our military so that we can make them citizens of our country. And then they turn around and become, even making one of them president without being born in Nigeria. And they decided that they will now wipe out and kill off every nation and every tribe in Nigeria. And they come together to sit down to talk about peace. Minorities and tribes who themselves do not see themselves in the country that is put together by a foreign power, and yet they do nothing, and they all gather together and they call the name of God and say, God, come and save us. And everybody is silent and a partaker in it and allow that to happen. And even those that speak up are themselves given a bad name like a dog so that they may hang them, so that they can accomplish a particular ideas, human ideas, learning in their own understanding, thinking they are doing so to help God in order to do exactly what we do not know. That God, even though He's God, and He's one that owns their life, without whom they could not be alive, they say they want to help God. And therefore, in order to propagate an agenda that is more of selfishness, that only has to do into putting themselves in the positions of power and the authority which they abuse in order to destroy life. And yet these lives cry out to the hearing of God about the destruction of human life. the wasting of the blood, which of course has to be paid by blood in order for them to be sanctified. As you saw in the book of Joshua in chapter 7, that they themselves, the Achan and his family, and all that they had was taken in, and they were all stoned to death. The blood sacrificed in order for them, for God to be able to release his hand from Israel, to take his hand off Israel. So when you see that people sometimes say that these were stories that are written then, and those stories are repeating itself all the time in a cycle. And people that live in lies and deceptions in the way they manipulate and use either the word of God or the things of this world in order to manipulate people, in order to cause confusion and divide them rather than seek the path of peace. Is women versus men, is black versus white, is one tribe versus another, it is one belief or idea versus another, and all the work of Satan himself, who is the divider in chief. The divider in chief, the handwork of the devil. And yet some people are silent and say that is okay and that is appropriate, and yet they run in the house of the Lord and say, God, come and save us. How will God answer you? His hand does not foment trouble, neither does his hand curse, except those that have cursed themselves and have drawn the curse of the Lord unto themselves, like those in nations around the earth. The key message I want you to learn from what the Lord have asked me to tell you is for you to see that even though Pharaoh was in power and has the authority, but he was humble enough to respect and submit to the power and the authority of God. In the power that he had vested upon Joseph to become the ruler of the land, to become his assistant, to help him govern. What do you see in the world of today? Those in positions of power will send the soldiers to go and kill a general overseer or a bishop or a man of God. We will not allow them to smell positions of power in the civic authority. They will see them as a threat, like some of the pharaohs in the days of Christ later, and Herod, and those that are assumed in the positions. And I see the difference. That's why we say that we in the West must change the mentality